Was Sri Narendra Damodar Das Modi giving into illusions or delusions when he felt very strongly and sincerely that he was not of biological origin, but that he had a supernatural significance and godly mission? Swagatham, Vanakkam, welcome. I would very strongly advocate the restraint, the discipline, and the culture of respect that we all must practice in public life in relation to what is introduced into public consciousness. Suppose a person says that he has a divine mission, and therefore, on the basis of that conviction, feels that he is quite different from all the rest. All others are of biological origin. Of that, there is no doubt. It's an indisputable fact that we are all of biological origin. And suppose a person feels that, given the fact that he has a mission which is completely different from what guides, sustains, and inspires all the rest, and his mission is so grand, so unique, so overwhelming in its implication and its demands, that he cannot think of himself any longer as a mere flesh and blood phenomenon, and that the divine element in him is what defines him as an individual. There are two possible ways in which to respond to this public claim. Now, first of all, let me state it with all the emphasis I can command, that it's not a small thing if somebody makes a statement of this kind in the public context in full glare of national attention. After all, Sri Modi was not making a secret claim to a limited number of people who constitute a private coterie. He was consciously making a statement, a claim, which was meant to be carried to every citizen, every person in the country, without any distinction whatsoever. So he could not have made this statement in an attitude of casual abandon. The humor struck him, and therefore he just happened to say like that. From the solemnity, the gravity with which he uttered those very significant and unique words, make me think 10 times before I dismiss it as a casual statement or lapse into some kind of an eruption of the irrational, about which psychologists have spoken a great deal in the past. These occasional spells of delusion to which some individuals could be prone. I would be extremely reluctant to see the words of Prime Minister Modi in that light. So this is one possible way of responding to a claim of that kind, that it is the product, or it's the utterance of a person in a state of delusion, and he is quite mistaken about himself, his personal significance, his role, and the nature of that role. The other approach is to believe the contrary, to believe that he was utterly sincere in making that statement, and that from his point of view there was sufficient ground at that point in time. At that point in time, I repeat, there was sufficient ground for him to entertain such a feeling, such a conviction, such an overwhelming sense of mission, which he could understand only in the language of spirituality or religion or whatever. Now, for example, if you were to ask Kalidasa or Shakespeare or Dante or Homer as to what was the nature of the inspiration that guided them or empowered them, the creation of these immortal pieces of literature, I'm sure for a while they'll be confused, bewildered. And after a little bit of thinking, they would have most likely attributed it to divine inspiration. If you're familiar with Milton's great poem Paradise Lost, particularly the introductory part, there Milton actually very consciously invokes the inspiration of the Holy Spirit in view of the grandeur of the undertaking that he is about to engage with. He says, I don't have the power in myself to do justice to this grand enterprise. So I need divine inspiration. The Greeks believed that great poetry was inspired by the muses, again, not of natural or human origin, of supernatural significance. Why, in Kerala, that great immortal voice called Yeshudas was described as Gana Gandharvan by none other than O.N.V. Kurupa, the virtual poet laureate, if you like, of Kerala. What did he mean by Gandharvan? Gandharvan denotes a status between the divine and the human. So according to O.N.V. Kurup, given the quality of Yeshudas's voice, it's not a human voice. And in fact, I have felt the same, though I did not have the vocabulary to name it as Gandharvan. And whenever I listen to Yeshudas, I used to close my eyes in meditation and ask myself the question, I have a throat with two vocal cords, Yeshudas has the same. But how can I understand this incredible difference between the quality of the output between the two? And you'd feel tempted to believe that it's a divine voice that uses Yeshudas as a mere instrument to reach the people. And I can go on giving instances one after the other. So there's something called inspiration. Shakespeare uses this idea. The poet, in a fine state of inspiration, with his eyes rolling from heaven to earth and earth to heaven, gives to everything a local habitation and a name. So whenever you reach the highest levels of performance, you tend to feel that you're no longer functioning purely in human strength and within the ambit of human capabilities, but that something more than human is at work in this whole process. That is why those who have meditated on the mystery of creativity feel that in the temple of creativity, in the sanctum sanctorum of creativity, there is somewhere the presence of the divine. Or creativity is the bridge between the human and the divine. Now, even at the very low levels, I have seen many people stick on the new cars they buy a sticker saying God's gift. God's gift. Now, it doesn't mean that God sent them money either in Indian rupees or American dollar or British pounds or German Deutschmark. It means that they strained every bit of their financial energy, nerves, resources, strength to acquire that car. Obviously, you will never see this label, God's gift, pasted on a Rolls Royce, Lamborghini, Maserati, or Maybach, or whatever, the high-end cars, because these cars are bought by the rich who do not need to even remember God. So they will never say, for example, I don't think Ambani would ever say that the cars he owns are God's gifts. I don't think Adani would say. Whereas if an ordinary man who never thought he would own a car in his entire life happens by the confluence of favorable circumstances, especially in having had to succeed to get a loan from the bank, he has trained every bit of his economic nerves to buy a car, then he would certainly stick to saying God's gift. So this idea of the human and the divine, and one way of reading this statement by Modi positively is to say that between the human and the divine, the distance is not all that great. And I would really pay a lot of attention to the implication of what he has said. I'm not trying to, strain my intellectual resources to rationalize, legitimize. I'm only trying to liberate myself and those who listen to me from the tyranny of prejudices and biases. It's no good to us or to anybody in the world to be under any kind of prejudice or bias. Harboring prejudice and bias is a terrible disservice we do to ourselves. We become intellectual cripples and we die emotionally, and we exclude ourselves from the higher realms of human experience and possibilities. So, now I take very seriously, unlike the politicians who deride him and ridicule him, I take very seriously the context, the state in which Sri Narendra Modi made that statement. I will not bring the element of ridicule or sarcasm anywhere near it. I have to say that very clearly. Now, I would like us to take one step forward and consider the context in which the statement has been made. And we need to do it because Narendra Modi ji himself fixes the context, and he insists that his statement be seen in that particular context. What did he say about the context? He said, as long as my mother was alive, I could not think of myself as anything except of biological origin. But after the demise of my mother, I began to feel that I am really not of biological origin, or the previous feeling or impression I had that I am a person of biological origin was wrong. It was a delusion. Now I know the truth about myself. That's what he's saying. And secondly, and it's equally important to realize, that he's claiming this special status, supernatural status, in relation to the destiny of India. He doesn't, of course, articulate it in the same manner that I'm doing, but from the context, that's my inference, and there is enough ground, strong ground, to make that inference. So there are two things. One is his consciousness of his mother's presence and his obligations to her, his mother. Second is the death of his mother and the complete refocusing of his emotional center on India, the people of India. Now, these are the two things we have to really keep in mind if you want to look at it truthfully, justly, fairly. Now, what was, so now forget about his mother, forget about everything else. Now let's concentrate entirely on Modi and the India of his perception and his awareness, and how Modi positions himself in the India that prevailed at that point in time. And all of us know that a significant, dramatic, radical change has come about as far as that particular factor is concerned. That is the India in relation to which Shri Narendra Modi felt this way and made public his claim. At that point in time, Narendra Modi ji sincerely believed that he was well set, inevitably set, to securing a brute majority in the parliament. 400 par, more than 400 seats. Now, Narendra Modi also knows that this is happening in a democratic system. In a democratic system, even if you get only one vote more than the middle level, say in the Indian Parliament, 273 seats, then in effect it is as good as having won all the 543 seats. because you form the government. All the power is in your hands. The opposition can do and say what they want, they can make ruckus and all, but the lever of power is entirely in your hands. And particularly in the kind of monolithic structure that Sri Narendra Modi is an expert in creating. He is the Lord and Master of all that he surveys, and therefore, at a point when he was actually anticipating and sincerely, absolutely, passionately being convinced that he was well on the way to getting a brute majority in the parliament, reducing opposition to a very pathetic rump, he naturally felt that he was equal to the country as a whole. Now, here I have to offer a little bit of theological insight. Nothing very strange, nothing very outlandish, something that every little child can understand. What is our idea of the divine? God is understood as infinite, omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, right? These are the qualities that we associate with the divine. Omnipresent, that is to say, God is present in every bit of all that is within the boundaries of our consciousness. In the political context, it's not the boundaries of one's consciousness, it is the boundaries of one's country. One's country is one's consciousness as far as the Prime Minister is concerned. And I can fully understand why it is so, and I have no quarrel with it. It has practical problems, but I can logically and emotionally I can understand why it happens. So as far as omnipresence, omnipotence, if you have 400 and more seats in members of the parliament, then you are de facto omnipotent as far as the affairs of the country are concerned. Even before that, he was nearly omnipotent. So at the time when Modi ji was making this claim, he was on the threshold of omnipotence, except that it is political omnipotence. Please understand, it is not spiritual or cosmic omnipotence, it is political omnipotence, and that is exactly what he is claiming. He is not claiming that he is the Lord of the universe. That was what Sambit Patra, the greatest expert on flattery anywhere in the world, created that fiction. And Modi ji has nothing to do with it, and it's very, very unfair to damn him with it. So, as far as omnipotence is concerned, omniscient. Now, over a period of time, we have noticed Modi ji has been gradually growing in his thinking, awareness, some may say delusion, that he knows everything. For example, how he was able to guide the Indian Air Force pilots and technical people about how to evade Pakistani radar and all that, how he managed the COVID scenario and how he prescribed remedies from time to time, how he knew the ultimate solution to all the economic problems in the country, like demonetization, methods like demonetization, etc., etc. See, over a period of time, you slip into this awareness, the state of thinking by which you think that you know all. Now, I tell you the logic behind it. Please understand this. For at least 600 years, we have said that knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. And what happens is, this dictum is capable of being reversed. Knowledge is power. If knowledge is power, power can be knowledge. Power can be knowledge. And therefore, a man in the seat of supreme power will come to be assumed as the fountainhead of all knowledge. And this is not a small thing. When Modi went and addressed a large conference of the top-notch scientists in India and many invitees in the world and many of the doctors, and said that the picture, the physical shape of a particular god proves that plastic surgery was practiced in very ancient India, stem cell technology, etc., and aviation technology like Pushpak, Viman, etc. He was applauded. He was applauded because, and I will not ridicule those who applauded him. It was applauded because simple logic is that absolute power is always associated with absolute knowledge. So when a person in absolute power says something, and you as a scientist think that what he's saying is contrary to your convictions as a scientist, then you feel obliged to correct yourself. If not for all purposes, at least for that purpose, within that context, you have to agree with the person who enjoys absolute power, because knowledge is power, therefore power is knowledge. And the person who has power has all the knowledge, and therefore what he says is the last word. And this is how things work in public life. There's no point in ridiculing Modi. If we have to ridicule Modi, we have to ridicule every one of us, because we're all part of this rigmarole, right? You have to ridicule all the scientists. You have to ridicule all the Air Force people who kept quiet when he said that he could guide the Air Force pilots through the clouds, etc., and all the rest of it, how to evade radar. So I'm only inviting you to think rationally, without any prejudice, without any bias. So we have examined omnipresence, omnipotent, and immortality. God is immortal. Now, once you have this kind of a situation, you actually begin to feel that you're politically immortal. Nobody can raise a little finger against you. You're absolutely safe. Your writ runs. Therefore, you're politically immortal. It actually denotes a state of absolute security, impregnable security, which expresses itself in terms of the attitude of sheer contempt and dismissiveness towards the opposition parties. All of this have changed now. Therefore, even as I can understand why Modi felt that way at that point in time, which I will not dismiss as something flippant, frivolous, or casual. The question now I want to raise, which I have the legitimate right to raise, is this. In the change scenario, in which his political ambition has taken a beating, power equations have changed, and the pan-Indian footprint of the BJP has suffered a major setback, a major erosion, and there is a perceptible diminution in the political and administrative power of Sri Narendra Modi. Does he feel the same way as he felt when he, through the medium of a select band of media people, conveyed to the country at large that he is a person of supernatural significance? Now, if he still feels that way, I will take it with folded hands. I will attach tremendous significance to it, and I will say, yes, that is something that all of us need to respect. On the other hand, if the delusion has suffered a body blow, and he now feels embarrassed about what he actually said, and we can find out whether or not he feels embarrassed about it, because if he never makes another reference to the same thing again, then it is clear proof that he feels awkward and embarrassed about it. Now, if that is the case, then reading retrospectively, we have every reason to come to the conclusion that he was in a state of delusion. He was in a delusional state at the time when he made this extremely rare, unusual, and at that time to many awkward claim, which if you've noticed, I never made a reference to it. I never ridiculed it, because I was always pondering over it. I would never want to look at anyone or anything through a colored glass of prejudice. I'll give that person all the chance in the world to prove the legitimacy, the truthfulness, the verity of the claim he makes. Now, I have to say once again that it is not unusual for human beings to feel divinely inspired. In fact, they are the people, individuals of that kind are the people who have done enormous good to humanity. Now, let me mention an example which is closest to our hearts. What did Gandhi say about himself? In an article published in the Harijan in 1937, Gandhi described himself exactly in these words, and I'm going to quote verbatim. He said, "I am an instrument in the hand of God to lead the people of India to freedom." Now, the claim that Sri Narendra Modi has made is not any different from that. But the question is, Gandhi redeemed that claim in relation to what happened to the destiny of India. So the question is, will Narendra Modi be able to redeem that claim, and will Narendra Modi hold on to that intuition, that conviction with equal force in the face of what seems to be a political setback or a period of political or administrative adversity? That will separate the chaff from the grain, the truth from pretense. So even now, I refrain from dismissing his claim as delusional. Even now, I leave a margin for him to prove that his feeling at that point in time was genuine, deep rooted in his human and spiritual makeup, and that it was not said something in order to secure some electoral gain, appealing to the sense of religiosity which is so strong and widespread among the electorate, in which case it's a bogus claim meant to be bogus, dishonest. On the other hand, if he sincerely believed in it, then he's duty bound to believe in it for the rest of his life. And it is not merely enough, it is not enough merely to believe in it. Belief without corresponding action is meaningless, it's empty. So I look forward further. I still haven't made up my mind. I would wait a little more, maybe 1 year, 2 years, 3 years more, to come to a final conclusion about how to evaluate this very unique, extremely rare claim made by a political leader. So that's where I stand. Do I dismiss Modi's claims? No. Do I believe in it with my eyes closed like Andhabhaks? No. What do? I keep my mind open to possibilities, and I would consider all possible grounds of assessment before I come to a final conclusion in this regard. Well, this is what I do. I don't insist that this is what you should do. I'm stating some of these personal things that we may all think together. Let's pull down the shutters. Let's face each other. Let's share the truth in our midst. Let's be free, and especially in our times, free from bias and prejudice of every kind. Let's be human. Jai Hind.